In your opinion, because I'm sure you've covered or I imagine you've read most that there is to read regarding this stuff. What do you think happened, and like how much of the official story is true? What specifically don't you believe? And
Right.
I guess yeah,
I'd say that a great vast majority of the official story is correct. It's true. Where I begin to question it and diverge strongly is when they start saying that this John Doe 2 didn't exist, or that this was a completely lone wolf attack where it was just McVey and Terry Nichols, when in fact we know that it was a group of people that carried this out. So that's where I kind of diverge from the official story. And the thing is, if you go back and you look at the opinions today of certain people who were involved in the case, like Danny Colson. He was an FBI deputy director. He was like third in line at the FBI, and he was part of the investigation. He admitted on the BBC in 2007. He said that the FBI had 24 witnesses to McVey and another person, and so we know that there was another person involved. And even the chief prosecutor Larry Mackey said that, if you were to ask us today, put your hands up if you're 100% confident that McVey did this by himself. He said if you would ask us to do that himself and all the other prosecutors, they would have kept their hands in their laps. So even the prosecutors now admit that they know that's not the case. The FBI admits that. And so what I think happened that day, boy, it's really tough to nail it down. But what I can say that I think is probably true is Tim McVeigh uh, he planned out a terrorist bombing this day with a group of what I believe to be were white supremacists. I believe these were neo-Nazis, and they wanted to carry out a war against the United States government. And I believe that they did bomb the Murrah Federal Building on April 19th, 1995, and I believe that some of them who were involved in it, they got away with it. And, that's not something that's acceptable to most people. And if the FBI drops the ball, they'd much rather just say that, oh, these other people don't exist than admit to it.
yeah, and I guess the FBI would say that there was a risk that what Timothy McVeigh would have been gone free had they not.
Basically, yeah, there's a risk that he could go free, that he could be found not guilty, that the defense could raise the issue of John Doe number two and argue that Timothy McVeigh was nothing more than a driver, something like that. And they wanted to avoid, if you have a giant hole in your case, like a co-conspirator who everyone saw, and you can't even tell us who this guy is, that's a major liability. Legally, I think a skilled defense attorney could absolutely utilize that to get their client free. So that certainly I think was a big liability for
And
them.
was there any like did Timothy McVeigh give any sort of statement or
He did not. He actually seemed to really relish in making himself into kind of a martyr for his the people who held his set of beliefs. He kind of made himself, I guess, the sole figure. He accepted all guilt. He would not implicate anyone else. Except for Terry Nichols, he would implicate him, but no one else, and really seemed to take this role as a figurehead for the movement. He was a prototypical fall guy, and he absolutely, I believe, relished that role that it in the attention it brought him. He really was a good soldier in that respect. As a soldier, his job was to make it so that his fellow soldiers could fight another day, and he did that by just denying the existence of any John Doe 2, saying there was no other mastermind, there was no one else involved, it was just me. But everything he says is totally contrary to what all of these witnesses saw.
and what was Terry Nichols' involvement in the
So, yeah, Terry Nichols was like one of his buddies from the Army, and basically it's a guy that McVeigh met in the Army and continued to associate with when he got out. And what happened there was Tim McVeigh, when he was putting his plot together to bomb the Murrah building, he was able to recruit Terry Nichols to help him in doing various tasks. And that was things like, for example, buying the tons of fertilizer, getting diesel fuel, helping him mix the bomb. And he actually was using Terry Nichols' credit cards for things like this, for purchases and using his vehicle. He really seemed to be like he was kind of manipulating and using Terry Nichols.
Gotcha. And so, just in terms, because I imagine that there's a kind of community out there of people in regard to the story. Are there elements that other people might say are true that you don't believe?
Absolutely, there are. There are a lot of people who would tell you, for example, they might say they think that Tim McVey is a patsy or is totally innocent. I totally disagree with that. I think they're absolutely wrong. It makes no sense whatsoever, especially when you look at the things McVey has said and you look at the evidence and you look at the witnesses. It's very clear that he was a key player in the bombing plot. And there are some people who, like, some of these conspiracy theorists will say, oh, he was just a patsy. And that's just, it shows that this person has not looked at any of the evidence, has not read any of the transcripts or the material. There are some people who they like to say that they think that like the government bombed the building or something like that. And they think it was like some type of black ops type deal. And so I tend not to go there because I like to stick to the evidence to say, what does the evidence tell me? And what I can say for sure is what the evidence tells me, that there was at least another 2 or 3 people who were involved with this with Tim McVey. Is that's what we know that from what the witnesses saw and what the surveillance cameras recorded. And that was 2 people in that truck that morning. So there definitely is some diverging when it comes to what I believe and what some people who look at this case might believe. They tend to, I think, go into areas that are unfounded, in my opinion.